Public hearings across Zimbabwe are devolving into shouting matches and physical standoffs. Citizens are currently swarming government venues, attempting to block a new constitutional amendment that has effectively paralyzed the nation's legislative process. This conflict centers on the 2030 bill. It is a specific legal maneuver designed to extend the presidency of Emmerson Mnangagwa, allowing him to stay in office years beyond his current constitutional term limits. While Democratic activists are protesting the move, the most significant threat to the amendment is coming from the very center of the ruling establishment. Powerful Liberation War veterans and senior military factions have begun a public campaign to stop the bill. These are the same organized groups that originally secured Mnangagwa's presidency during the transition of 2017. These military insiders are now in open revolt. They are leaking internal communications and organizing high-level resistance against the administration they helped build. To see why these architects are now trying to dismantle their own creation, we have to look at the specific, decades-long survival tactics that Mnangagwa used to climb to the top. The 2030 bill has created a deep fracture in Zimbabwe's ruling class, forcing a confrontation between the president and the military establishment that could reshape the country's entire political alignment. Whistleblower accounts from veterans like Comrade Whitehead describe a long-standing pattern within the government. Political survival is achieved by identifying and then systematically isolating internal rivals. This started in the 1980s. Rival liberation groups like ZAPU and ZIPRA were outmaneuvered and eventually merged under the 1987 Unity Accord, effectively ending their existence as independent political threats. By 2014, the same strategy was applied to the inner circle. Former Vice President Joyce Mujuru was a major contender for the presidency until she was publicly accused of treason and targeted for removal. The mechanism is almost always the same: rewriting the party constitution. By establishing one center of power, the regime can legally strip vice presidents and chairmen of their authority with a single vote. This culture of constitutional manipulation and internal pressure eventually led to the military intervention of 2017. During that transition, Mnangagwa moved against Robert Mugabe, his longtime mentor and the head of the party for nearly 4 decades. For this administration, political allies are treated as temporary assets. Once their support is no longer required, the legal framework is adjusted to move them out of the way. Today, the 2030 bill is being used to run that same cycle of isolation. While the government claims to be listening to the public, critics point out that the legislative process is being bypassed in favor of controlled, highly scripted hearings. Observers on the ground describe party loyalists being bussed into these venues to fill seats before the public can arrive, ensuring that any dissent is drowned out by a prearranged majority. This effort is primarily aimed at neutralizing Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, the former army chief who remains the most powerful obstacle to the president's total control. Chiwenga retains intense military and veteran support. If the president cannot legally remove him or limit his influence, the 2017 power-sharing agreement remains a constant threat to Mnangagwa's authority. The 2030 bill hearings are effectively a staged process designed to provide a legal basis for the final removal of the military establishment from the government. The war veterans and military factions have correctly identified the stakes. They understand if the 2030 bill passes, their influence within the state will be permanently erased. Because the ruling party controls the electoral machinery, the veterans are moving away from traditional politics. They are no longer focused on winning at the ballot box. Their new focus is nationwide civil disobedience. They have begun calling for mass stayaways, asking citizens to stop working and keep the streets empty to prove the government has lost its ability to function. This strategy is paired with planned domestic boycotts, designed to cut off the day-to-day economic resources the administration needs to maintain its security apparatus. The veterans have even threatened the country's most vital economic link, the southern border. They are discussing plans for physically blocking international trade at the Plumtree and Baitbridge crossings. This map shows why that matters. Zimbabwe is landlocked. It cannot survive without these southern routes. Severing them would immediately crash the local economy and likely force a regional intervention from neighboring states. The 2030 bill has forced the country to a critical junction. The very groups that built the current administration are now deploying the same military-style pressure tactics they once used to seize power, only this time they are using them to bring the system down.